Encouraging, empowering, inspiring each other on this journey of faith. United in purpose, sisters in love we are. Women World Leaders.
Welcome to Women World Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Julie Harwick. Thank you for joining me today as we celebrate God's grace in our lives, in this ministry, and around the world. The last time we met, we focused on the importance and value of gratitude. It should permeate our lives and be a major component of the worship we offer to God. But recently, He's been reminding me that giving Him the glory He deserves also requires a recognition of who He is. In June, my husband and I celebrated our 40th anniversary with a trip to Glacier National Park and the Canadian Rockies. The scenery was absolutely spectacular. For 10 days, we drove and hiked on snow-covered mountains, beside impressive rushing waterfalls, through dense, fragrant forests, and along the shorelines of brilliantly colored mountain lakes that reflected a mirror image of the peaks above. Each vista was more awe-inspiring than the last. There were glaciers that had begun forming hundreds or even thousands of years ago. We saw bears ambling across the road, mountain goats scrambling up rocky cliffs, and 2 moose foraging for their favorite algae from the bottom of an alpine lake. The landscape was completely different from what we normally observe here in Central Florida, and it was breathtakingly beautiful. It was impossible to see such wonders without thinking, God, you are so creative. You are an artist like no other. I can never be surrounded by nature without having thoughts like that. The variety of bird songs I hear in my backyard, the intricate pattern on the butterfly that lands nearby, just long enough for me to take notice. The vibrant greens of the trees and the brilliant blue of the sky all remind me that nothing is here by chance. It was all thoughtfully created by a God who wanted to show us His glory and provide a beautiful place for us to come to know Him. I often think about the fact that He could have scaled it all back a lot. He didn't have to come up with more than 73,000 varieties of trees. We could have found the required shade, food, and lumber with just 50 or so. And what purpose does a butterfly serve anyway? There's no other creature completely dependent on them for food, and there are plenty of other insects to pollinate. They certainly wouldn't have to be so ornately decorated. The variety of everything in nature is just mind-boggling. I'm a cat person and have 3 of them, 2 orange tabbies and a Siamese. The orange cats are sisters and have exactly the same stripe pattern, but one is long-haired and the other short-haired, so they look very different. But when I take time to observe their markings, I notice how symmetrical and precise they are. Each stripe has a counterpart on the opposite side, and they're placed in equal distance from one another from head to tail. The Siamese has no stripes, but she has dark gray ears that gradually fade into the silvery cream color that covers most of her body. Her tail, legs, and face also have the same gray color that seamlessly fades into the cream color. They all shed a good bit, and when I examine any specific hair, I notice that it's rarely a solid color, but it's segmented into several different shades that ultimately form the designs they wear. Trying to recreate a coat like that would be a daunting task, because each hair would have to be precisely colored and arranged to complete such a pattern. Why did God go to so much effort to create coats of varying colors, textures, and patterns on something as insignificant as cats? He didn't have to, but clearly He appreciates variety and beauty, and created us to appreciate it too. We also see it in humanity. So many different skin tones, hair textures and colors, body shapes and sizes. No two fingerprints are identical. Perhaps even more mind-blowing, consider snowflakes. Each snowflake, which can only be observed for a fleeting moment as it drifts to Earth, is completely unique. As a creator, God is the ultimate. Even the most creative inventor, the most ingenious artist, could never hope to achieve the tiniest fraction of what he has done. He could have placed us on a planet that looked as though it had been planned by a Soviet-era architect, bleak, gray, and utilitarian. But instead, he carefully set it within a solar system, just the right distance from the sun so that we would neither freeze to death nor incinerate. And he filled it with oceans, lakes, and rivers, forests, jungles, deserts, and mountains. He populated it with every imaginable kind of animals, birds, fish, and insects. He did all that to demonstrate his power, creativity, glory, and love for us in creating something so beautiful. The earth and everything in it contains is his masterpiece, and we can know and come to love the artist by appreciating his work. Romans 1:20 says, "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his internal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse." Not only is God the creator of our incredible universe, but he has other abilities that surpass anything we could dream of. The prophet Isaiah recognized something profound about God when he was inspired to write, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." God reminded me of that truth recently when I was praying. I was praying for a specific person who shared a name with another acquaintance of mine. Maybe because I was in the zone of speaking so conversationally with God, I sort of forgot who I was talking to and felt the need to identify which person with that name I was referring to. Almost immediately, I caught myself and realized how ridiculous it was to think that God didn't already know exactly what I was thinking. Psalm 139:4 describes how intimately God knows each of us, saying, "Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely." That truth got me thinking about God's unfathomable ability to hear prayers of millions, possibly even billions of people all at once, and act on them according to his wisdom. I've been meeting a lot of new people recently, and I struggle to retain the names of 6 or 7 of them at a time. Can you imagine knowing not only the name, but every tiny detail, the words, hurts, thoughts, and actions of billions of people? And not just the people currently walking the earth, but all those who have gone before us and all who will come after. As incredible as modern technology is at storing and processing information, it can't hold a candle to what God can do. And no one had to enter the information that is readily available to him. He knew what each of us would think, say, and do before he had even created anything. As creatures who are limited by, and in many ways defined by, the constraints of time, it's difficult to comprehend an eternal being. The book of Revelation describes 4 living creatures in heaven who never stop saying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come." In our world, everything has a beginning and an end. But God, who created this world, is not of it. The name that the ancient Hebrews used for God, Yahweh, was considered too sacred to even speak aloud. But it captured his essence perfectly because it translates to the self-existent one. When God appeared to Moses in the form of a burning bush that was never consumed, Moses asked God how he should answer when people asked him who had sent him. God's response was, "I am who I am," meaning, I have always been and always will be. In other words, no beginning and no end. It almost hurts my brain to think about that. A being who exists outside of time and space. It's such a foreign concept, but maybe I need to think about it more and meditate on all of God's unique qualities. Speaking of time and space, how about God's ability to be omnipresent? When Jesus spoke his final words to his disciples, commissioning them to go into the world to preach the gospel, he promised that as they went to the ends of the earth, he would be with them always. That promise wasn't for them alone, it was for all of us. Much earlier, God had spoken to the prophet Isaiah, saying, "Do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have summoned you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you." To be with us, each of us, in all circumstances, requires a supernatural ability only God possesses. We often say to our loved ones, "I will always be there for you." It expresses our level of commitment and love, but in reality, it's not always a promise we can keep. As much as we may want to honor our commitment, we may have no way of being physically present for someone in their greatest hour of need, and at times, we aren't even able to be emotionally present for them either. But when God says, "I will never leave you or forsake you," he means it, and he alone can follow through. If you ever studied Latin, you know that the word omni means all, and we attach it to several of God's attributes. Omnipotence is another word that comes to mind. Unlike us, God is all-powerful. He demonstrates that ability throughout his word by causing the sun to move in reverse as a sign to King Hezekiah, by delivering military victories to his people against incredible odds, by giving women well past childbearing age the opportunity to become mothers, by becoming one of us through a virgin birth, by healing the lame, blind, and deaf, and even raising the dead, and most of all, by conquering death itself. And he continues to perform miracles today by healing, redeeming, and transforming lives in ways that only an omnipotent God could. Another characteristic closely related to his omnipotence is his sovereignty. When we think of a sovereign or a king, it doesn't typically mean much to us in our present culture. Modern-day kings are generally just figureheads, obligated to participate in state ceremonies and represent their subjects around the globe. The kings of the Bible were quite different, possessing all power and authority. When Esther, in the Bible, approached the king who had selected her to be part of his harem, she was risking her life. To appear before the king without an invitation could result in execution. But because she was obediently following God's plan, the king graciously extended his scepter to her and invited her to ask of him whatever she desired. Everyone in the kingdom had a healthy respect for the king and his ability to do anything he pleased. As the King of Kings, God has all power and authority to do as he pleases. He alone is in full control of everything that happens. And our culture does understand control. It's a dominant theme for the vast majority, as evidenced by television and social media ads. Medications promise to enable us to take control of our A1C, or psoriasis, or weight, or mood. We can control our children's spending through an app linked to a credit card we give them. We can control how much money we want to put down on a new car and what type of payments we want to make. The list goes on, and it seems everyone wants to control everything. But the reality is that though we may think we're in control, life often proves otherwise. God, however, truly is in complete control of everything, even if it might not seem like it. When we face adversity or suffer loss, we may question His sovereignty, but we only need to remind ourselves, as Bible teacher Kay Arthur often said, that everything that touches us is filtered through His fingers of love. The psalmist put it this way, "Though I walk in the midst of trouble, you preserve my life. You stretch out your hand against the wrath of my enemies, and your right hand delivers me." I rarely use the word awesome because I feel it has been so overused in recent decades that it has almost become a throwaway word. That's sad, though, because when used correctly, it describes our God so well. Thinking about Him fills me with awe and wonder. He is the singular best thing I can think of, and I recognize that I don't do it nearly enough. God is so worthy of our worship simply because of who He is. I challenge you to go for a long walk by yourself, someplace beautiful. Maybe a wooded trail, an open field dotted with wildflowers, beside a river or lake. And if you don't have anything like that nearby, wait until dark and go out and stare at the stars. Take in the beauty of His creation and praise Him for His skill and imagination. And if you wake up in the middle of the night or can't fall asleep at all, consider all the ways He is so different from us, all-knowing, all-seeing, all-powerful, and using those abilities to work out everything for our good. Give Him the honor and praise He so richly deserves. Thanks for listening to Women World Leaders Podcast. Join us each week as we explore together God's extravagant love and your courageous purpose. Visit our website at womenworldleaders.com to submit a prayer request, register for an upcoming event, and support the ministry. From His heart to yours, we are Women World Leaders. All content is copyrighted by Women World Leaders and cannot be used without written consent.